Almost every ice age in history was survivable. Cold, brutal, deadly for millions of creatures, but survivable. This one wasn't supposed to be, because this time, the entire planet froze. Not the poles, not the mountains, everything. Oceans turned to armor plating from pole to pole, and for tens of millions of years, Earth became a solid, hostile snowball hurtling through space. And somehow, against every odd, life crawled out the other side. This is the story of the Ice Age that almost ended everything. And why, without it, none of us would be here to talk about it. Around 720 million years ago, Earth looked almost nothing like it does today. There were no forests, no animals, not even anything you could call a plant. Life existed, but it was small, slow, and almost entirely microscopic. Bacteria, algae, and simple single-celled organisms drifting through warm, shallow seas. The continents were clustered together into a single sprawling supercontinent called Rodinia, sitting mostly near the equator, soaking up sunlight. It was, by every measure, a stable world. And stability is exactly what made it vulnerable.
Rodinia's breakup was the spark. As the supercontinent slowly tore itself apart, fresh volcanic rock was exposed to the atmosphere across a huge area, right in the warm, rainy tropics. That rock reacted chemically with rainwater and pulled enormous amounts of carbon dioxide out of the sky, locking it away in the Earth. Less CO2 in the atmosphere meant a weaker greenhouse effect. A weaker greenhouse effect meant a slightly colder planet. That should have been a small, boring change. Instead, it triggered one of the most dangerous feedback loops the planet has ever seen. As the world cooled, ice began creeping outward from the poles. Ice is bright and reflective, so instead of absorbing sunlight, it bounces it straight back into space. Less absorbed sunlight meant more cooling. More cooling meant more ice. More ice meant even less sunlight absorbed. The planet had stumbled into a runaway spiral with no natural brake pedal, and it kept accelerating. Normally, this kind of spiral fizzles out before it reaches the equator. This time, it didn't.
Glaciers crept down from the poles, swallowing entire continents in ice sheets kilometers thick. Sea ice crawled outward across the oceans, chasing the retreating warmth toward the tropics. And once ice reached roughly the halfway point between pole and equator, the runaway feedback crossed a point of no return. There was simply no longer enough dark, sunlight-absorbing ocean left to hold the line. Ice swept over the last open water. The equator, the warmest, most stable strip of the entire planet, froze solid. Global average temperatures may have plunged to around minus 50 degrees Celsius. Sea ice more than a kilometer thick sealed off the oceans from sunlight and from the atmosphere above. From space, Earth would have looked like a featureless white marble, with almost no hint that an ocean, or a planet teeming with life, existed underneath at all. For any organism that needed light, warmth, or open water, this should have been the end of the story. And yet, life did not vanish. It just went looking for cracks in the
Around volcanic hotspots, small patches of ocean may have stayed open, kept liquid by heat leaking up from below the crust. Thin, sun-bleached patches of ice let a trickle of light filter through in places, just enough to keep photosynthesis limping along. Microbes clung on in isolated pockets of meltwater and thin films of liquid trapped inside the ice itself, squeezing out an existence in conditions that would kill almost anything today. It wasn't thriving, it was barely holding on. Populations of ancient life were pushed into small, scattered refuges, cut off from each other for millions of years, quietly mutating and adapting in isolation, while the rest of the planet lay frozen and still. Some of these refuges may have existed in the most unlikely places imaginable. Deep under the ice, meltwater ponds could have formed on the surface, where dark, wind-blown dust absorbed just enough sunlight to warm a shallow puddle, creating tiny oases sitting directly on top of a kilometer of solid ice. Other survivors may have retreated into the rock itself, living inside pores and cracks in stone, protected from the worst of the cold by a thin layer of earth. It's a strange thought that the ancestors of every plant, animal, and fungus alive today may have spent millions of years as little more than a smear of biology hiding in a crack, waiting for a world that no longer seemed to want them. So how does a planet trapped in its own ice ever escape? The ice itself sealed off almost every mechanism that could have cooled the planet further, but one process kept running underneath it all, completely unaffected by the frozen surface: volcanism.
Volcanoes don't care whether the sky above them is blue or white. Deep below the ice sheets, they kept erupting, and with nothing to weather them away. No rain, no exposed rock reacting with the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide had nowhere to go. It just kept piling up in the atmosphere, year after year, century after century, for millions of years straight. Eventually, the CO2 concentration climbed so high that it may have reached levels dozens of times higher than anything Earth experiences today. And a greenhouse effect that strong doesn't just thaw a planet gently, it overwhelms it. Once temperatures finally crossed the threshold, the same runaway feedback that froze the planet flipped violently into reverse. Ice began melting at the edges, exposing dark ocean and dark rock, which absorbed sunlight instead of reflecting it, which caused more warming, which melted more ice. The spiral that took millions of years to freeze the world unraveled in what may have been just a few thousand years, an eye blink in geological time. The result was not a gentle spring. Extreme heat combined with a supercharged water cycle to trigger torrential global rains, weathering exposed rock at a ferocious pace, and flooding the oceans with nutrients that had been locked away under ice for millions of years.
It was chaos. But for the tiny, battered pockets of life that had survived the freeze, chaos meant opportunity.
In the tens of millions of years following the thaw, something changed. The fossil record shows the first hints of more complex, multicellular life beginning to appear and diversify, not long after Earth's most brutal ice age finally broke. Some scientists think this is not a coincidence. The theory goes like this. The extreme stress of near total extinction may have acted like a bottleneck, wiping out simpler competitors and forcing surviving lineages to adapt in extraordinary ways just to stay alive. Combine that with a fresh flood of nutrients pouring into the oceans during the thaw, and you get the ingredients for an evolutionary explosion. Snowball Earth may not have just failed to kill complex life. It may have helped build the conditions that made it possible in the first place. There's also a more direct chemical link. All that newly weathered rock and nutrient-rich runoff pouring into the oceans after the thaw would have supercharged photosynthesis on a massive scale, pumping huge amounts of oxygen into the atmosphere over time. And oxygen is not a luxury for complex life. It's a requirement. Bigger bodies, more active behavior, and specialized organs all demand far more energy than a simple microbial cell needs. And that energy only becomes available once there's enough oxygen around to burn fuel efficiently. In a strange way, the planet's worst climate catastrophe may have also built the power supply that made animals possible at all. We wouldn't be here to ask the question if it hadn't happened. Should you worry about this happening again? Definitely not anytime soon. The specific conditions that caused Snowball Earth, a supercontinent breaking apart right along the equator during a period of naturally low atmospheric CO2, are an extremely rare geological alignment. Today's continents are scattered in the wrong configuration, and thanks to us, atmospheric CO2 is climbing, not falling. If anything, the runaway feedback loop we should actually be worried about right now runs in the opposite direction. Still, Snowball Earth is a reminder of something important. Our planet's climate is not automatically stable. It has flipped into extremes before, and feedback loops that seem small at first can spiral completely out of control if left unchecked.
The planet survived by accident, buried under kilometers of ice for millions of years, saved only by volcanoes patiently working underneath the surface the entire time. And this wasn't even a one-time fluke. Geologists have found evidence for at least 2 and possibly more separate snowball episodes within just 100 million years of each other, suggesting the planet lurched in and out of total glaciation more than once before finally settling down. Earth, it turns out, has a long and complicated history of nearly destroying itself and stumbling into something better on the other side. Next time you feel the sun on your skin or see an ocean that isn't a sheet of solid ice, remember that Earth once nearly lost both for tens of millions of years and clawed its way back anyway. Life didn't just survive the apocalypse.
In its own frozen, chaotic way, it may have used it to become something greater.